What is up, my guys? It's Ed Barton, the social anxiety coach again here. And in this video, I want to tell you what social anxiety medication I took, what it did for me, and what was the good, the bad, and the ugly. I wanted to shoot this video for you because I got yet another comment in the comments section asking me about my experience with medication. And I know this is a question which a lot of people have. I've had emails on it. I've had lots of questions on the channel about it. So I wanted to dive into that today. I also wanted to make this video for you because when I went down the medicated route, there were some problems that I encountered, and I want you guys to avoid the pitfalls that I fell into. If you're watching this video now and you're considering taking medication for your social anxiety, then I'm guessing that you're probably pretty much at the end of your rope. You may have tried lots of other things and you're just really feeling very desperate and you want to resort to medication as a possible last hope. If that's the case, then trust me, because I absolutely know how you feel. I was there 10 years ago and I know it's a pretty desperate place to be in. So when I was 32 years old, I just got a job at the embassy in Beijing working for the British Foreign Office, and I was super stressed. I was stressed out of my mind. I was around a lot of what I perceived to be high status people. They were Oxford and Cambridge graduates. I was also around high-ranking diplomats, including the British ambassador to China. So on top of all my social anxiety, this just absolutely blew things out of control. I couldn't handle the meetings. I couldn't handle seeing my boss all the time. I couldn't handle the conversations. I couldn't handle sitting near people in an office, looking over the computer at someone opposite me. I was just drenched in sweat the whole time, stiff all the time, having basically panic attacks, tension, headaches from the muscle tension going all the way up my neck. So I was just like scuttling around this office in the embassy, just off my face on adrenaline, stress hormones and fear basically. I was lucky enough to be covered by a good medical insurance package, which meant I could go and see a Western doctor in Beijing. So I went to see this guy from New Zealand, told him about my problems and told him that basically I felt I'd been pretty brave. I'd been struggling with social anxiety for decades. I'd done pretty much everything I thought I could at that stage, and that I just didn't really know what else to do, and I would like to try some medication. So this guy was super nice. He was a really good doctor, a really nice guy. He said he understood my situation, and he prescribed me 2 drugs. One was an SSRI called sertraline, which is also known by its brand name Zoloft. An SSRI is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which means basically it blocks some of the synapses so that serotonin can accumulate in the brain. So overall, it raises your level of serotonin in the brain. The second drug I was prescribed was propranolol, which is a beta blocker. And beta blockers basically reduce the amount of hormones like adrenaline, which are released into the body, and reduce the action of the heart. So it slows your heart rate down, stops all that racing in your chest, and basically makes you feel much more comfortable when you're under pressure. Okay, so what did these drugs do for me? Well, let's start off with Zoloft. Now, first of all, when you're prescribed an SSRI like Zoloft, you will have to have a period called tapering on. So you will build up gradually from 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams to 75 milligrams to 100 milligrams, and that takes a period of time. So it's not just something you jump into and jump out of. There has to be an adequate tapering on and tapering off period. So what I found as I started to take Zoloft, I started to get some quite noticeable side effects. This included muscle tension. I actually started to feel more anxious overall. I felt muscles in my face were contracting, especially a very uncomfortable sensation in my chin here. I got something called nerve zaps, sense of like an electric current would shoot up this cord in the back of my neck. I also had night sweats where I would sweat really profusely through the solar plexus area, and I'd wake up drenched in sweat. It interrupted my sleep. I also got erectile dysfunction and couldn't get an erection while I was on the medication. Okay, so that's the downside. Now, how about the upside? Well, unfortunately, there basically wasn't any for me that I noticed. There was a very short period at the very beginning where I wanted the medication to work so much. I felt very strange. I felt very spacey, and I could tell that my brain chemistry had definitely changed. And I wanted to interpret this in a really positive way. So there was some kind of positive placebo effect for just a few days at the beginning. But after that, the side effects started to become so acute that I really didn't enjoy taking it at all. And at one point, I even felt the urge and did start smoking again on one particular occasion. And I later learned that this might be due to the suppression of action in the prefrontal cortex, which inhibits impulsivity. So I had this impulse to start smoking again. And on the flip side, my experience with propranolol was pretty amazing. The first time I took it, I'd been asked to give a speech in Chinese in a huge auditorium full of diplomatic staff from across Beijing. So there were ambassadors from smaller embassies, high-ranking diplomats. All through the crowd, it was just all diplomatic staff. And I'd been chosen by my Chinese teacher to give this speech fully in Chinese. Leading up to the speech, normally I would be able to feel my heart pounding out of my chest. Half an hour out or an hour out, I'd already be able to feel the anticipatory anxiety building to a point that was really uncomfortable and almost unmanageable. But this time, I could still feel palpitations and a strong heartbeat, but it felt like it was coming from way further down in my body. And I remember this thought registering with me, this might be different, like this might actually be manageable. I didn't have that feeling of all my blood and my anxiety and my adrenaline just about to overflow, and that fear, which I'm sure you can relate to, of, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to handle this. This is going to be a disaster. Something massive is going to happen. I'm probably just going to lose control of myself physically, freeze up, start shaking, or start catastrophizing about some terrible thing that's going to start happening. On this occasion, I had this feeling of like, wow, these symptoms do already feel like they're actually controllable. So then when I stood up on the stage behind the lectern ready to speak, something truly amazing happened. It was almost like that scene in The Matrix where Neo can lean back and just catch the bullet and everything's in slow motion. I could actually speak, and my mind wasn't just going blank and blurring. Instead of it being an exercise in me just trying not to humiliate myself and just stumble through as quickly as I could so it wasn't a disaster, an exercise in damage limitation, what we were actually dealing with was me doing something really well in front of a crowd for the first time. And that was a really amazing feeling, I have to tell you. And I was just there completely controlling the room for the first time in my life. So that was a really incredible feeling, to be on a stage in an auditorium in front of high status diplomatic people making jokes and just feeling like I was controlling the air and the energy. It was really an amazing feeling. So after this amazing experience, I thought, this is it. I've got the magic pill, the solution to all my problems. I'm just going to take a couple of beta blockers before I have to do a speech, go on a date, or do anything, and my life is sorted. The only problem is it didn't quite work out like that. There's something called the law of diminishing returns in science, right? And what happened is the more I started to take propranolol, the less it started to do for me. And I remember there was this one moment where the penny kind of dropped. I'd gone to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with my boss in Beijing to interpret at a meeting, and I'd taken about 4 of these propranolol right beforehand, and I couldn't feel that it was doing anything because these are very nerve-wracking situations, and I still could feel the butterflies and all the rest of it. So I took a couple more, and I remember sitting there waiting to go in, and I was thinking, I actually still feel nervous, like really, really anxious here. This is going to be a train wreck kind of feelings of anxiety. And I just felt nauseous. And I remember from that particular meeting on, I just got more nauseous when I took them, and they did not curb my anxiety at all in the way that they had before. And it was a very sad realization for me when I realized that propranolol basically was not working for me at all anymore. So to sum up my experience really quickly, I would say Zoloft, absolute nightmare for me physically and mentally. Did nothing for me, just gave me a host of bad side effects. Propranolol, an absolutely miracle drug, but unfortunately only lasted for a very short time before the effects totally wore off. Now, this is only my experience. I know there will be people out there who are watching this who really want to go down the medicated route. I'm just sharing my experience with you, and unfortunately it didn't work for me. Now, I have seen people on the internet, on YouTube, on Reddit, on forums, who have had miraculous experiences with Zoloft. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it can't work for you. I think there are certain people where certain medications really mesh with them, and that is a very fortunate situation, whether it's Viagra, whether it's testosterone, whether it's whatever. If it works for you, that's great, but oftentimes it's a very small percentage of people that actually works for. If you can find a medication that works for you and doesn't give you a whole host of terrible side effects, then that's a really lucky thing. So I'm not saying I'm anti-medication. I am absolutely not anti anti-medication. I'm not anti-Western medicine. If you've had an amazing experience with this, I'm not trying to discount that at all. I understand there's a massive variation in how people are put together genetically and all the rest of it. If it has worked for you, that's fantastic. I'm really glad that it has. If you're watching this and you wanted me to say, oh, it's brilliant, you should go ahead and do it, I'm really sorry if I've disappointed you, but that is just my own personal experience. I really hope that's been of some use to you and perhaps given you some food for thought. As always, I'd love to hear from you, so hit me up in the comment section below, and please like, subscribe and spread this video as much as possible, because I want to get the word out about social anxiety, destigmatize it and help as many people as possible. That's everything for today. I look forward to seeing you guys all in the next ones. Stay tuned and bye-bye.